Hello, hello, and welcome to tonight's Kitchen Convo. My name is Mitch, and I'm here with the president of the Lycoming County United Way, Mr. Ron Frick. Ron.
Hi, Mitch.
Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely.
And so this series that we are talking about is called Connecting with Culture. And so throughout this series, we have the opportunity to talk to a variety of people, a different person each week, and talk to them about how the culture is changing, how we see culture changing, and as we talk tonight, we'll especially be able to dig into what it has looked like, what continues to look like for the Lycoming County United Way, and how Ron has been perceiving that, how he sees that, and what they are able to do and working on as far as connecting with the Lycoming County United Way and connecting with culture in our community and throughout. So anyway, but before we go any further, can we say a prayer?
Sure.
Great. Lord, I thank you for tonight, and I just thank you for everything that you continue to bless us with, the ability to connect this way. And Lord, we do ask that you bless this conversation. And Lord, as we continue to try to connect and build relationships with people where they are, we pray for your guidance and your blessing. Again, bless us tonight in your Lord, Savior, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
So, well, Ron, why don't you share with us a little bit just about who you are, who is Ron Frick?
Okay, so as Mitch said, I'm president of the Lycoming County United Way now. I spent almost 34 years in the banking community, locally here at M&T Bank. Started back in 1983, and one of the things that was important to the bank then and now is having employees get involved in their communities. And so in 1984, a little after a year after I started at the bank, the president of the bank approached me and said, would you like to be the loaned executive from Northern Central Bank to the Lycoming County United Way? You're going to go talk to donors and community leaders and be involved. And I said, sure, because the president of the bank asked me to do it. I had no idea what the United Way is all about, but I learned, and here I am all these years later running the show.
Yeah, here you are. And so
yeah.
I got to ask you a little bit before, and I know it wasn't in our script questions, but just that transition from shifting, and again, as we start talking about culture and the shift of it, what has it been like changing positions from working at a bank to working in this capacity of a nonprofit, community-focused, and I know you were a volunteer with them for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about what that shift has been like in your life, how you've been impacted by it, and what you've seen.
Yeah, so as I said, the bank was always very much involved in the community, and so part of my job as a relationship manager for the bank was to meet with clients and talk about ways that the bank could help them. So this is really just an extension of what I was already doing. Now, I was doing it in a for-profit role, so the bank's making money and we're building clients and customers and those kinds of things, but I'm really doing the same thing. It's all about relationships, and the culture of the bank is very similar to the culture of the community, and the community wants its members to be involved and engaged and all those kinds of things, and so it's really just an extension of what I was doing. So not a lot of difference. It's not finance, although there's parts of my job that involve finance.
Yeah.
It's really relationships.
Cool, great. And so as working with the United Way, what the heck do you do?
Okay, so I'm responsible for an organization with 5 employees, including myself. So we're a small staff. We raise between $1 million and $1.3 million a year, and we're responsible for basically mobilizing resources in the community and putting people together to raise funds to involve the community in giving back to organizations that we support. Right now there are 29 different programs in Lycoming County, a few in Sullivan County, and a few in Tioga County that we support, and those communities are responsible for helping us raise the money to support those programs.
Okay, and so and these programs have been established for a good amount of time, and because you're relatively new, like two years.
Yeah, almost 2 years.
Yeah. Almost 2 years in, and so and I bet the first year your head was just spinning.
A lot of learning. I was a volunteer for all those years, but running the organization and learning the culture, learning how United Way Worldwide, which is our sort of national organization, learning how United Way is run was, a little bit of a change for me.
Right.
But I think the community has embraced some of the changes that we've tried to make. Always a challenge raising money. There's lots of great causes in our community, and what my role has been for the last 2 years is really to raise the awareness in the community of the work that we do, and hopefully that attracts investors to the work that we're doing.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about a few of the programs that the Lycoming County United Way, what y'all do? Just a little bit of the specifics about them.
Yeah, so we focus in a couple of areas. Hunger and homelessness. So some of the organizations that we work with in outreach, the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank would be one that a lot of people would be familiar with.
Okay.
In the homelessness area, we work with Family Promise. We support their rent match program. We support the Comprehensive Emergency Assistance Program at the American Rescue Workers. We support the Liberty House, which is affiliated with the YWCA. The Saving Grace Emergency Shelter, another program of the American Rescue Workers, receives funding from the Lycoming County United Way. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Saving Grace Shelter down off of Campbell Street is the only shelter in a 5-county area where folks can go in a homeless emergency.
Really?
A lot of people don't know that. So we're very fortunate in our community that our friends at the American Rescue Workers are able to provide that shelter. And that shelter was started in a collaboration between the American Rescue Workers and the United Way years ago.
So it sounds like you partner with a lot of different organizations.
Absolutely.
And it seems like just from the little amount you just shared is that you really value partnering with people, partnering with other organizations that maybe they might not know you're partnered with them, but the work is getting done.
Correct. So we're not on the ground doing the work. We're supporting the work that's being done. So we call them program partners because that is exactly what it is. It is a partnership between the community, and that can look a lot of different ways. That can be an individual, that can be a corporation. When I worked at M&T, the partnership between M&T and the United Way then translates to the partnership between the United Way and the individual program partners.
Gotcha.
So we're working together to really solve community issues.
Great. Okay. Well, let's take it down a little bit. Now, again, this series is called Connecting with Culture, and I want to talk and start honing in a little bit. And I'd love for you to share about how you are seeing the culture shift. And with your role at the United Way, what does it look like for your organization to start connecting with the culture as it is shifting? Like, what are some of those differences? We'll start there. Like, what are some of those cultural differences, that shifting dynamic that perhaps a lot of people feel it, but maybe it's hard for us to articulate it. So what are some of those things from your perspective?
Okay, so probably the biggest thing, United Ways were really founded on soliciting funds from workplace campaigns. So we go into a major employer, Kellogg, for example, and the employees there give their hard-earned hourly wages to the Lycoming County United Way, some portion of that. And so the United Way was founded on workplace campaigns. So my grandfather, my father, went to work in the morning. The plant manager talked to them about the value of the United Way. They filled out a pledge form. They wrote a check, came out of their paycheck, whatever. So that's really how the organization was formed. And about 60% of our revenue still comes from those kinds of workplace campaigns. Well, what has changed in the workplace? Some of those manufacturers don't exist anymore. Some of those organizations don't allow their employees to give that way anymore. Some of them allow us to come in and make presentations. Some of them don't.
And so before just presentations, it was pretty commonplace.
Sure.
Like it was almost either an expectation or it was just a cultural norm.
Correct.
For you to come in or the organization to come in and be able to talk, but they might not be so receptive for whatever reason.
Right.
What are some of those reasons? Do you know?
Well, yeah, some of those reasons are, one, the workforces are getting younger. Okay, so folks that might be your age or even my kids' age, my kids are in their late 20s, they give differently. They believe that they should give their money to a specific cause. They don't necessarily understand that we're supporting maybe 29 different causes or at least groups of causes. And so, we're competing with a lot of organizations that can attract a donor in a different way. They're grabbing the heartstrings of that donor that wants to give to a specific cause.
Okay.
And so culturally, that's changed our organization, because now we
All
have
right.
to be attuned to those folks who gave in a workplace campaign.
Yeah.
But now another generation coming up is saying, I
Right,
want
right.
laser focused
Mm-hmm.
causes.
So yeah, okay, and yeah, and that makes sense, and well, it makes sense to me to because I've had a number of conversations where people will say that they don't necessarily trust a large organization.
Mm-hmm.
Like the larger organization that there is, maybe the harder it is for a younger generation to trust, and maybe an older generation too. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a huge amount of what you're saying, is that there's so many good things and worthwhile things that organizations like yours help and partner with, but they need that laser focus, really being sensitive or pulling on their heartstrings, like you say. And I can see good and I can see bad inside of that.
Right. So the thing that really differentiates the United Way is that the way that the funds are distributed it's done by community panels.
Okay.
So it's panels of 12 to 15 people that sit around the table for a couple of days and review applications and review grants and actually decide as a community where the need is the greatest.
Okay.
And so that's the accountability factor. So a lot of young folks are saying, well, yeah, I understand that, because I want my money to be spent in a responsible manner.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all of that process in place to allow us to do that. But again, they might not necessarily agree with us funding 29 different programs, because they might only be interested in 2 or 3 or 1.
Okay.
So that's really the shift.
Yeah. And so from my perspective, churches, that's very similar to that church dynamic where, hey, there might be a ministry area we want to give to.
Right.
But people might not be as eager or willing to give to the entirety of the church.
Right.
Like, we're not so excited about paying for the electric bill as a church, but we'll
support the homeless shelter.
Yeah, right. But we would love to support that. And
Right.
and that can be a common thing that we encounter inside of that. Now, what about the cultural needs? Have you encountered, or have you talked much about what if those needs are shifting? Are they staying the same? Is that?
Yeah, I think programs shift. For example, when I started volunteering, 36 years ago, we had 42 different programs that we funded.
Okay.
Now we have 29.
Okay.
So the number of programs have shrunk. Some organizations have decided that they don't necessarily need funding from the United Way anymore. They've become self-sufficient. Some programs have changed, based on the culture of the community. Mm-hmm. And so United Ways have, really moved with where the community need is the greatest. And so
what would some of those things be?
For example, the preschool program that we funded for a number of years at Hope Enterprises, they have gone through a change in the last year or so. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of the funding sources that were supporting that program have changed. And so the United Way is not one of those funding sources anymore. Right. They've done some work with STEP, which is the community action agency in our community. And so their transportation program, which was funded in part by the United Way, is now in cooperation with STEP, and so STEP has other ways to fund the program. They don't necessarily need the United Way to fund all or even part of the program.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of changes that take place in the community, and we try to be receptive to that and make sure that as those programs maybe disappear, other programs like the River Valley Health and Dental Program are new programs.
Okay.
3 years ago, that program started with probably 80 kids that were being transported by school buses from the Williamsport area schools to the River Valley Health and Dental Clinic on Hepburn Street. Mm-hmm. That program was created because of a collaborative effort between the school district, the River Valley Health and Dental Center, and the United Way. We said, these kids really need oral health care, but we can't get them there. Okay. And so now we help fund that process of getting kids from those schools to the dental clinic. Now what has happened is the dental clinic becomes their home health hub. Okay. They're learning about other areas that can be supported by the organization. Gotcha. And that program is well over 500 kids now. Okay. In a 3-year period.
Gotcha. And so at the heart of all of this is really this attempt to connect with people. And so, regardless of kind of where we are in this or how we're serving programs, et cetera, in the community. Again, at the heart is building relationships and how we connect. So what have you started to experience? Again, you've had 2 years in this position. What are some of those differences that exist now as far as making it more difficult to connect with individuals?
Well, I think one, as a culture, we don't have as many conversations like we're having right now.
Yeah.
We don't find ways to learn about the person that we're trying to connect with. Social media has a lot to do with that. There's a lot of benefits. Obviously, one of them we have right here.
Right.
But people tend to be disconnected. There's a lot of distractions in life. And so they forget sort of the core of where they're connected.
Right.
They forget about faith sometimes. They forget about having a conversation. They forget about writing notes to somebody to thank them for something. I think so. We've become distracted and disconnected, and so it's harder to build a relationship or sustain a relationship.
Right.
And so in our business, in the human services business, it's really important to have relationships with people.
Yeah. Not
just fundraising and those kinds of relationships, but relationships with program partners, relationships with end clients that are the recipients of the service.
Right. And again, one of the things that we talked about last week is that, so I have a cell phone right here, but one of the things that is said that is one of the biggest cultural differences, or defining factors of our generation, is technology.
Absolutely.
Now, but one of the things that they say is that actually, maybe more so than technology, is that our generation has more choice than any other generation beforehand. And so it is interesting to think about when we think about relationships. Our time, we have the exact same amount of time as we did 20 years ago.
Right.
But we have so many more choices that how that is impacting the choices that we make, the relationships that we have, the intentionality, and it almost seems like it's wreaking havoc on us, and we don't even know the consequences yet because we haven't lived through it.
Right.
All the way.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think you have a lot more decisions to make, and you have to make them quicker.
Yeah.
So we don't take enough time to really sit and think about it. And so, and social media and technology, just accelerates that. So it's really important for those of us that are doing resource development, that are doing community impact work like we're doing at the United Way. It's really difficult to get people to sit long enough to hear the message.
Right.
And so when you think about the change in the culture from the workplace campaign where we went in and actually got to talk to the employee to now where it's, well, how do I get that information to them? How do I make a connection without talking to them one-on-one?
Right. I mean, and it might be, yeah, right. And so even communication, I know at First Church, how we communicate is one of the biggest struggles.
Yeah.
I mean, because, there are a lot of different things that shift, and in how to communicate that continues to be one of the things that, well, if we don't increasingly figure that out, we're going to have a harder time connecting with the people that are already part of this organization, let alone the people that we're trying to reach.
Well, and if you think about a church or an organization like ours, a community, there's different constituencies within that community. So how you communicate with somebody who's, in my situation, in their later 50s, who maybe wants a piece of paper and a bulletin and wants to see things differently, with someone who's my son's age who want to see it in video or on Facebook or on Twitter. We have to figure out as a culture, a church, a community, an organization, how we're going to communicate with those folks in different ways,
right? The
way they want to hear it.
Yeah, and it there again gets to choice of communication even. My preferred way, even sign up list. This is one small example. It's kind of the point of preferred mode of communication. And so text, phone call, Facebook, email, which one do you prefer? I know for me, I prefer a phone call,
right?
But for a lot of people, an email is great, or a text message might be great. And a lot of people would say, never call me. I'm so awkward on the phone.
Right.
But I love that.
And as a leader, you have to figure out how is the best way to communicate to the greatest number of people.
Right.
Which is difficult.
Yeah, that's right. Without people feeling lost, right? So you're part of First Church, and you've been a faithful member, and God has used you for just wonderful things. And I want to talk a little bit about how you've seen connecting with faith in this culture. And so I know you said that you have 2 young sons. I think it's funny that I'm no longer in their category. They're in their late 20s, and I am no longer able to be referred to in that. And so I do have some gray hairs in my beard. And so
not many.
Yeah, but where are you with that? Because you've been part of Bible studies, and you've been able to see God move in so many wonderful ways. Where are you with that? Like, what's going on?
Well, I tell people this because, to me, working at the United Way, leading the United Way, working in this business is really a ministry. I think God, sort of led me to this position. Over 35 or 40 years. I enjoyed what I was doing. So it really wasn't an issue that I didn't enjoy banking, but I always enjoyed the community part of the job. And so I think this is one of those things that it's a ministry to me. And so my faith is a huge part of that. When you're talking to a donor about investing in the United Way, one of the first things I ask them is, what kind of things do you like to donate to? Do you donate to your church?
Okay.
Do you tithe?
So you asked that question.
Oh yeah. I think
great.
Look, philanthropy is a heartfelt thing. If you're not participating in the ministries of your church, if you're not participating in your hospital or your schools, or then that's a training opportunity for me. It's an opportunity for me to talk about why it's important to participate, why it's important to be faithful, what God has done in my life, and how He's helped me get me to the point where I am now. There's not a day that doesn't go by where I don't thank Him and ask Him for help to get my job done. There's a lot of days that are difficult. There's a lot of challenges. But then you have situations where you can help somebody on a one-on-one basis, and it changes your entire perspective. And I think that's what we're doing in ministry, whether we're in a church or whether we're in the United Way. We're helping people one issue at a time and trying to just move the needle with that particular person.
Now Danielle, I just to read what she says. It said we are struggling with communicating across all ages at work too. Very hard to figure out the best. So true. So, yeah. I mean,
it's a challenge.
It really is. And so perhaps there's an app that'll come out to solve everything. Probably not. Now, what about connecting age-wise again? So you've with a younger generation with faith,
right?
And so, do you have any insight or anything that you've observed about you growing up? This is how you, Ron Frick, encountered faith throughout your experience.
Right.
To now, you're looking around and seeing a younger generation. Perhaps, I don't want to speak for you, but perhaps not connecting the same way that you experienced.
Oh yeah, right. It's totally different.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I was a Sunday school kid, right? My mom and dad dressed me up every Sunday morning and put me in a car and drove me to Sunday school, and I had Sunday school teachers, and then we went to church, and it was a routine. It was not, particularly uplifting. It was a requirement.
Yeah.
And then I would say in my 30s at First Church, I became involved with the whole Promise Keepers movement and sort of men of God trying to do more in the church and take more responsibility as parents and fathers and those kinds of things. And so that's really where I accepted Christ in my 30s. It was not in Sunday school. It was not in a sanctuary somewhere.
Okay.
It was in a stadium in Syracuse, New York.
Okay.
And so, culturally, that was a change. Well, and so now, my kids and the younger generation, I think, because technology is so prevalent, they're going to connect with the church in different ways. They might not even connect the church with a building. Right. So some of the work that you're doing with the Acts Network and some of the outreach programs that First Church is doing, I think, are going to attract that generation in a way that they want to be ministered to.
Right.
Sunday school is not the way they're going to get a relationship with Jesus. They're not going to get it that way. They're going to get it with their friends in a gym or in a coffee shop or someplace else where they're going to connect.
Yeah.
And so we have to figure that out.
Now you can be honest.
Yeah.
I know it is the work that you said I do, but does that at all make you nervous? Does that make you trepidatious personally? Like, hey, this isn't the way I experienced.
No,
it doesn't.
No, one of the greatest things that First Church has done, and I talked about this years ago when I was in a leadership position, even before Matt. We were very internally focused.
Okay.
We were a great church. We were a welcoming church. We were a church, lots of people on a Sunday morning, very friendly, but we weren't doing a lot of outreach. Now there's more of a balance. There's more things going on outside the church to attract people who may or may not want to come into the building.
Right.
But we want them to have a relationship with the same Savior that we do.
Right.
So how do we do that? Well,
Yeah.
we don't do it in the traditional way because that's not appealing to everyone.
Yeah.
And so we have to find new ways to make that connection.
Yeah, and I appreciate the language that we've been using of this. We've been talking about this gathered and sent community.
Yeah.
Is that there's a beautiful place with this inherited church that people can come to experience, the Sunday morning, maybe the Sunday school, that's not going away.
History is important.
Yeah, history, tradition,
Yeah.
and there's wonderful, beautiful things about it. At the same time, being able to be sent, like the shelter and the pajama fat, these different ways that we're trying to engage culture in that way in order to, like, as we've been talking about, build relationships.
Right.
It all comes down to how do we build relationships, and if it's true that people are not naturally just walking into our church building like 30 years ago, what does it look like for us to go and build a relationship on a soccer field or in a coffee shop? And
you don't get the opportunity to invite somebody to become involved in a relationship with you or with your Savior or with your church until you have a relationship. And so, the start of it is the relationship. If someone would not have invited me, Wayne Fosnot had not invited me to go to that stadium event, where would I be? I mean, we talk about that a lot. We're very good friends, and we talk about how many men came to know Jesus as a result of going to those conferences, going to those stadium events. I mean, there's 20 or 30 people that would not have the relationship that they have
just
now
in our context.
In our congregation.
Yeah.
And that was a movement for a few years that was really across the country, across the world.
Right.
And that was something completely foreign to us when we started doing it. That was not the traditional way, of bringing people into a relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
So, I'm grateful for our church being sort of on the forefront of thinking of new ways to attract people, with the ultimate goal that they have a relationship with Jesus.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Well, we're getting close to 8 o'clock already, and I told you it would fly by.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, it is fun. So any other thoughts, just as far as when we're through connecting with culture again, like with the United Way, with faith, anything that's kind of rattling around in Ron Frick's brain?
So I think the most important thing, I guess, that I get out of my work and the work in this community is this is a terrific community. There's a lot of things that we can still do together. We have to work together. We have to find ways to build relationships, to build partnerships in our community, and really work together to try to solve some of the greatest issues that we have. There's issues in every community. Our community has always done a great job trying to solve them. Sometimes it's a little fragmented. Sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable. But at the same time, I think we've got to find ways to collaborate. And so my faith is really important in that process, making sure we stay focused, trying to figure out new ways of doing things, and just being open to changes in the culture. I mean, being open to different kinds of people coming into our lives. And, it's not always comfortable, but they're loved in the same way that we are.
Yeah, and, a lot of Janet, Pastor Janet will say, remember your North Star. So in ministry and in life, but when we've talked about in ministry, so your work with the United Way, in those moments where, we're talking about how it's so difficult to know how to communicate, connecting with people is different. The trust of a large organization has been deteriorated throughout culture. all these things, we can remember our North Star, which is Jesus Christ, and about the making of disciples, the building up of disciples. And that's our motivation and connecting, of building relationships with them. And just by talking through talking today, one of the things that really sticks out to me is how you've really seen Christ at work in bringing you to where you are today. And continually, like like you said earlier, there are days where I just have to have total dependence on Christ,
trust,
and trust, and which is just such a wonderful thing to hear, that there are people that out there that are experiencing their faith in such a powerful way that might not work for a church.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do ministry.
Amen. Yes, and so. Well, Ron, thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this is a great. Yeah, and look forward to seeing what else the United Way has up in store. And now I know I didn't ask you this either, but if someone wanted to get involved with the United Way, how would they go about that?
Yeah, so you can call us at 570-323-9448 is our phone number. You can go on our website at lcuw.org. We have a Facebook page, so you can connect with us on Facebook or other forms of social media. And there's lots of opportunities. There's special events. We have a 5K trail run coming up at the Williamsport Country Club in March. We're going to need volunteers for that.
Great.
Our annual dinner's coming up in April. There's kind of events going on. There's citizen review panels that are going to be involved in distributing the money that we've raised this year. And then there's the fundraising sort of aspect of things that we do in the fall. So lots of ways to get involved. If people are interested in doing that, check us out and give us a call.
He didn't ask me to ask that question, just to be very clear.
Yes, thank you.
And so
commercial.
No, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, obviously they're doing a lot of wonderful work, and maybe God is perhaps moving you to want to go and check out what's going on in their neck of the woods.
Yeah, and if not with us, get involved with somebody.
Yeah,
really get involved at your church.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. I look forward to being with you all next Wednesday for our next kitchen convo. Blessings.